Hello, and welcome to Cinema Span. This season, we will be covering the films of 2007. I am your host, Louis Illigus IV. With me today, actor-comedian Devin Beckwith.
Hello.
Hey, Devin. And we have Mahyn Qureshi from the class of 69. It's a monthly show in LA you could go check out.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. Today, we are talking about Juno and Knocked Up. We'll start with Juno, directed by Jason Reitman. This is a 2007 film, of course. What were your thoughts?
I've seen it before.
Yeah.
But I watched it back when it first came out, and I remember not liking it. But this time rewatching it, I was like, oh, this is actually a really funny, cute movie and like well done. Yeah, I thought it was really funny. I'm trying to think of any standout moments that we had where we were like, whoa.
That's wild. Yeah, you did not like it.
I didn't like it
time?
when I watched it. And back then it was, those types of movies were so cool too that I really wanted to go and like be like, oh yeah, I love it. But I just didn't like it. I didn't get it, I think.
Right.
Well, which is interesting.
I mean, it's a really interesting time, especially for like, these are both, non-abortion films, at a very interesting moment for like those discussions. But yeah, I actually did not see Juno when it first came out. I somehow missed it. I feel like it was everywhere though. Like literally everybody had seen it.
Yeah.
Devin, did you catch it?
I didn't see it, but was familiar with it, and it was like always one of those movies that's like, oh yeah, I should watch that one day.
No, same.
And,
yeah.
Yeah, of course, was very familiar with like Elliot Page, probably because of that movie, because I can't think of anything else.
I think it's their breakout film for sure.
But we were talking about it and we're like, I don't think we've seen him in much else other than that movie and Umbrella Academy, right?
No, it's interesting. Elliot Page is, a lot of people think Elliot Page is in the Last of Us games, because they modeled the character Ellie is the name of the character. It's very much off of like a young Juno kind of like aesthetic, especially like a lot of the characteristics. It's like a young independent woman in Last of Us, that's very that has rougher edges, if you will, but it's Elliot Page is good, but I think like once you have a role that's this big, you can kind of afford to
do whatever you want.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's true.
They were nominated for an Academy Award for this film.
Oh,
wow.
For Best
That's
Actress.
fair, yeah.
You were saying that the acting was all right.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed by it. His acting in it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's because I expected so much from it, like, because I've heard so much about the movie and how great it is, and like how like almost all of Elliot Page's notoriety, at least at the beginning, came from that I expected it to be like mind-blowingly good. But it was, I thought Michael Cera, I feel like, gave a better performance.
Did you think it was more of the writing at points, or was it like actually execution?
That's a fair point. It may have been the writing, because so much of the dialogue, I feel like, is not stuff that normal people say. It's very, as real as the movie feels, the dialogue is just like completely hokey, hacky, jokey, in a way that kind of works. But it definitely probably makes the acting a lot more complicated.
I do agree that it usually works, but it seems like this is the start of like this is one of those films that influenced so many other films that came after it, that like now you've seen those cliches really drawn out and played out. So that now that you see the original, quote unquote, not the original, other people are doing these feel good comedy dramedies before, like James L. Brooks. But it's just not, I don't know if it hits the same way for me too, because I think I also had too much as far as expectations went on this. And I agree with like Mahyn's take. It's fun. It's like, it's light. It's kind of like enjoyable. There's not really anything like super offensive in this that like
Yeah.
turned me off. But then I also thought like it's just not coming together to be like something that, you know, really excels. Actually, like weirdly enough, I watched Knocked Up first, that I was expecting I was expecting to find more depth in Juno and less in Knocked Up, and I think it was a bit flipped.
That's so funny. I thought the opposite for myself. I was like, oh, Knocked Up. I was so irritated by that movie watching it. I thought it was not that good at all.
Well, we'll get to it in the second half, but I think like a lot of the irritation is almost on purpose.
Yeah.
To like show everyone's kind of like unlikable.
Yeah.
And there are points where like it goes a little far.
Yeah.
But I think it's at least trying to say something about gender dynamics. It's interesting. It's not, we will get to it, but Juno starts with Juno standing in a lawn, staring at a lawn chair, right? Or not a lawn chair, but rather a lounge chair.
Right.
Juno says it all started with a chair. And you get all that narration. Juno's hanging out, drinking from a gallon of Sunny D.
Yeah.
One of the like great 2007 details of just like something you couldn't plan to not be relevant today, but that, you know, makes it an artifact. There's the same thing with Michael Cera's Tic Tacs, I think.
Yeah.
Like, where do you see orange Tic Tacs anymore nowadays?
Yeah.
Let alone white ones. and also, Michael Cera's holding a Hot Pocket.
That's what that
was.
I was like, that looks so delicious the whole time. I was like, what the hell is that?
You guys did not eat like a million Hot Pockets as a kid.
No, because they always had pepperoni in them, and I grew up in a Muslim household, so I like hardly ever ate those.
Yeah, fair enough.
But it looked good.
I'm sure they have cheese ones, but then it's like it's cheese and
What's
bread at that point. Like,
just get a calzone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Cera's outfit in this is extremely reminiscent of Scott Pilgrim. And this is before he does Scott Pilgrim. But like Scott Pilgrim has a lot of those the sweat bands on his head and his arms, and it's just doing a lot of that really basic color block matching. Obviously here he's actually a runner, and so like there's a reason for him to be in that fit, but I just thought I was thinking about it the whole time, and then he's also playing guitar at the end, which is like Scott Pilgrim plays bass, and I was just like somebody saw this film and was like, yeah, that's the one kid who could play this role, right?
Yeah, I feel like he's really been typecasted into that same role a bunch of times, but he's great in it.
He is really
he
great.
Does a good job.
He's also in Superbad this year.
Yes.
Which he's really great in too. I was expecting him to have a bigger part.
I was
in
thinking
this
that
film.
too. I was like, he's barely in it.
I was surprised,
especially because like as a character, he's like willing to be a part of the journey. But it's also it's interesting. I think you would assume that like there's more J.K. Simmons stuff in this. That there would be like more resentment, almost like the way the father-daughter dynamic is being played, but it's all pretty open and like everyone's just kind of on Juno's side, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, it was weird how easy it was for Juno to tell her parents. Like when she actually said it, they took it really well.
Yeah, which I think is like nice in that it feels like a subversion of that scene. And you do see a little bit of pushback at the beginning, where they're like, "Are you sure? Have you really thought of this?"
Right,
and they're like, "Okay, no, all right, this is what our daughter wants. And we gotta go with it."
They kind of reminded me of the parents in Easy A. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
It's been a while, but I loved it back in the day.
Yeah, the parents
reminded me. Is it Stanley Tucci?
Yeah, Stanley Tucci. And,
best.
I forget the lady's name, but she's really funny too. But yeah, they kind of reminded me. I feel like they might have been inspired a little bit. I have no idea. I'm guessing, but yeah, like that chillness with whatever the daughter's choices are, but a little bit of, which I kind of like seeing in these kind of movies because it throws you off a little bit because you're like, oh, that's not what I expected her parents to react like.
But like that, exactly. Like in art, we're looking for dramatic tension and conflict, and so usually it's easy to throw in like some more of the cliches, and so
Yeah.
that is where it's nice. Is like there's some scenes in this and Knocked Up where it's like it really feels like this is how people talk, and like we're showing something that doesn't always get shown on film.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like J.K. Simmons also just like I expected to be a hard ass.
Well, of
Like
course,
because he's J.K. Simmons,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like
you're thinking Whiplash. You're thinking J.J. Jonas from the Spider-Man movies. Yeah, and I think it's what works for him though so well in this.
yeah.
He really like you can see that he's still him, but he's just embodying like a normal Midwestern dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Michael Cera's mom in the movie, I feel like played the more traditional parent that would probably have, but she was also like, she was cool with Juno coming over and hanging out.
Yeah, in their
with him.
room or
And-
whatever.
Yeah. And I
Even though
thought-
she did not like Juno at all.
I also thought it was interesting that Juno's parents never told Michael Cera's parents that he was the dad.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was kind of weird because I feel like if I was a parent, I'd be like, yeah, your son got my daughter pregnant.
But
Yeah, that
also
is
like
interesting.
that'd be a good dramatic scene. Like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, how come he never really had to deal with any of that in a way? I mean, he was a great guy.
No, but really, there's
Yeah.
one moment where like Michael Cera's dealing with the kind of
Yes.
news, and it's like when the whole school finds out,
Yeah.
he's just like out running, and like a kid comes up to him, and he's like, "Hey, did you hear Juno's pregnant?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh yeah," and then
Oh my god, I didn't even.
oh yeah, No,
clock that.
and then the kid, like it's like, "Did you hear you're the dad?" like right after.
And how did the mom never like hear about that? I feel like it seemed like a small town and
Right.
the whole school knew. I think there was one other time he was kind of held accountable by Juno towards the end where she was like, oh, what's another 10 pounds when she
Right,
takes
with the
him
bag.
with the
and
bag.
She's upset about him asking another girl to prom.
Yeah.
Right.
But even then after that, she apologizes to him in the end, right? She's like, sorry for being
Yeah.
a dick or something. Yeah.
Yeah, which is a every rom-com has to have a breakup scene, right? Like
Yeah.
where and then they get back together or whatever. But it was handled at least well, where you're like, he's just a high school kid, and he asked her, if she would want to keep dating him, and she said no, and so he asked another girl to prom that he clearly doesn't like as much. Like, it's not even, and that's what's so great about it all is it's not him being a huge dick or something like that. He's just like, I just wanted to go to the prom with a friend.
Yeah.
Like that's all this is about. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice. I do like how grounded a lot of this is. And I mean, even though I didn't like it, this probably won't even break my top 10 for 2007. It'll probably be, upwards of 20, 30 maybe if I'm thinking of in the 100. But I'm also sad they don't make as many films like this that are like as big budgeted. I was actually thinking about, so this was like a Best Picture like nominated
Shit.
film too, and it's a big year. It's got No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood also nominated.
Wow.
And this movie made the most amount of money in the box office domestically out of any of the films nominated that year.
Honestly, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like it came out when we were in high school, I want to say, right? 2007?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like this.
Well, I was actually in 6th grade.
Oh, shit.
I was born in 96. So this was like, yeah,
I'm 95. So then I was in the 7th grade. So I wasn't in high school yet.
but just on the precipice.
Just on the precipice, yeah.
And it's such a Netflix DVD era that people are rewatching a lot of films, at home. So it's, I'm sure it was in the conversation for like the next 3 years after it came out too.
Yeah. I feel like this was like when it was becoming cool to be, okay, I'm going to talk about something, but like when I grew up in high school, it was so cool to be like a white hipster and like listen to like that kind of music that was playing in there.
Yeah, the soundtrack all over that, so indie.
It was so cool, and I totally get why that movie did really well because it was just like I feel like the start of that era, and then for like years, I think up until I reached college, that was the cool like thing to be, that personality type, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and Juno feels relatable, like whether or not you're a pregnant girl who's 16, like or you're just me at 26 sitting here and watching it, like it's just a classic coming of age story at the end of the day. And what do you do when more responsibility than you're ready for is thrust upon you?
Yeah, I guess looking back now, I didn't get it was because I was like, oh, I feel like I would have had a totally different experience than she did. And she was so chill about it. And like, you know, she just had such a funny like outlook on life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah, anyone else would have been.
Especially when it feels like the news is like yelling at women, you know, for even wanting to think about making a choice. Like you're just like to just see somebody be like, yeah, I'm just kind of comfortable with what I am. Yeah. Kind of nice. Yeah.
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 Definitely.
Yeah, I thought about this as a Best Picture nomination. And I was trying to think like what would be the film like last year that came out, and Coda did win Best Picture last year, which was it was a pretty quiet film that just it did pretty well at Sundance, and then it premiered on Apple TV Plus. Like it never got a theatrical wide release, but it's just about a partially deaf family and like their it's either their son or daughter who's basically just trying to help the whole family navigate through the world, which very much feels like just pick something that's kind of like in the discussion right now or maybe underrepresented in some way, and then just tell like a light drama about it. Which they're still making films like that, I guess. It's just not like it's interesting because Coda didn't have a lot of discussion, but it did win Best Picture. It was like I think a lot of people's parents watched it, but I didn't hear anyone my age talking about it.
I've never heard of that movie, yeah.
Right. Which, maybe speaks for itself of like the streaming landscape, but yeah.
That's cool.
Let's see. We got some early stuff. Juno gets bullied in school. He just pushed in like a classic like guy walking by her.
That
and like
actually always stuck with me, that scene, and I didn't realize it was from that movie. But I feel like I've seen it in other rom-coms where the jock actually secretly wants the freak.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Which I feel like, but that line always stuck out with me.
I was gonna say I love that piece of narration.
Yeah.
And like Juno's not narrating as much of this as you think she would be, but the time she does come in, I think it really works.
Yeah.
And it is right because like it's part of the trope, right? Like you love what you hate, you know, and or you hate what you don't understand when you're that age.
Mm-hmm.
I think her narration is kind of peculiar to me because it's so infrequent that it doesn't feel like a movie that is sort of narrated, but it's just like maybe you get like 2 lines from her in each act and that's it. And then
I would not be surprised if you told me that they added it in post. Just wrote whatever lines they needed to give context to some scenes.
Yeah, definitely.
Juno talks on a hamburger phone.
Love that.
Did you guys have any of those?
That was is a hamburger phone a thing?
It's a real thing.
Okay.
I remember there were like hot dog phones too, and like
I don't
like
remember
even like
that.
a clamshell one. Like
Oh, I remember the clamshell. Okay, yeah.
I mean, I never had a hamburger phone, but it is a perfect like they're still speaking on landlines. And that's the $10 phone their dad bought them at Kmart or whatever. Like just so many good details. J.K. Simmons is playing an HVAC specialist. There's like a line early on about like it's a bit later, but it's when Jennifer Garner is that one of the adopted parents is interviewing Juno, and J.K. Simmons says, did he ever feel like you were born to do something?
Oh yeah.
And he says, yep, heating and vacuuming. Just killer. But yeah, Juno does decide to have the baby pretty early on, and finds the parents through a newspaper ad. Another thing that feels very 07. We've got Jason Bateman and Jennifer Garner here. I think Bateman's in the middle of Arrested Development around this time. I don't know what Jennifer Garner's up to.
I feel like that was 2007, right? Was that Daredevil era? Like she was in the movie Daredevil, right? She played
Elektra.
Elektra. Yeah. Was that then, or maybe that was a little bit before? I don't
Probably.
Yeah.
I think that sounds about right. Like 06 maybe.
Yeah, I loved her in those movies. She's actually really good in this movie. I feel like she always gets very like
she is in the
Yeah.
pocket. I think
Yeah.
she is the best performer here.
Yeah.
Was she nominated for Best Supporting?
No,
Or
that would have been a good one to run though.
Yeah.
That's actually a good call. I think it's just so. Best supporting is such a tough race. Usually, but yeah, because I mean they'll run like people that are lead actors and actresses in the supporting category all the time. And so like if you really only have like 10 to 15 minutes of screen time, like
It's not gonna happen.
it's tough. It's just like how do you make the
Interesting.
impression while you're there? But she does make a really good impression.
She has a great arc in it too.
Yeah.
Well, she's just so grounded. It feels like, and like it's taking the whole thing like so seriously.
Yeah.
And I think like you even get some of the skittishness from Jason Bateman, like off the start. You know, you're just kind of like, he's given a little of that like. Something up with this guy, something a little
Yeah,
weird.
wasn't his first line like, I can't wait to be a dad and do dad shit or something like that, right? Yeah, right away I was like,
Yeah, and
no.
in his first scene with Juno too, I think he gives one of his signature winks to her too, which it's like, oh,
yeah. And that's the thing. It's like it's we all know what's gonna happen here, like everyone but Juno. Like Juno even goes home to her mom, and like after she's been hanging out with Bateman, and it's kind of like, what are you doing here? Do you know what you're doing? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing I remembered from the movie, like going into watching it the second time. I was like, oh yeah, that guy's a creep. And that was the one thing.
Like you knew this time.
Yeah, I knew.
Watching.
I was like, I know he's going to hit on her.
Yeah. I mean, but he's even like played at least a bit sympathetically in that, like, okay, here, like you can tell he doesn't maybe like the situation he's in, and like there's smaller hints to like the rifts in the marriage, and so you're like, okay, maybe I'm not placing all the blame on like Juno here. It's just more like the situation is revealing what was already wrong in this relationship. And don't get me wrong, he's definitely being a creep. Should not be hitting on a girl this young
Definitely
in any capacity. But just like again, I'm just saying it's things aren't as cliche in this film usually like as they could be, and they're at least attempting to show like a level of depth to every character.
Yeah. What does he say? He's like, oh yeah, she let me have a room to put all my stuff in, right?
Right.
Oh, yeah. And then she even calls that out, Juno.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, awesome. And in your house, you get a whole room for your stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's other things just like, they're watching the horror movie together, and he's like, turns it off. He's like, oh, she doesn't like me watching this. She likes me to contribute or whatever. You're like, oh man, he's doing classic,
Yeah.
love the old ball and chain stuff.
Right. One thing I was happy though is that he decided to leave her at the end.
Yes, and not like be like, oh, this is gonna work or something.
Yeah, because so many times I feel like movies end like that, but at least he had. I don't want to say the courage, but at least he left, you know?
And accountability for his actions, right? Like there was an effect for what happened.
Yeah. And she still got her happy ending too. What were we going to say?
If he were to stay, it's like the type of thing that like would be played as a happy ending.
Yeah.
When, of course, that's not at all.
No.
But instead, he left, and she, the mom, got her actual happy ending, which was like, to be a mother.
Yeah.
Which is just an awesome arc, and just the note that Juno leaves at the end is such a great touch. It's on the back of a Juno leaves a note, and Jason Bateman opens the door, and he's like, looks like a Jiffy Lube bill. Like Jennifer Garner just grabs it out of his hand immediately, like flips it around.
I was wondering how she knew it was for her, because she has a line where she says, "It's for me," and then she grabs it.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how she knew before she read it.
Maybe like intuition, just like who else would be coming at my door right now type thing. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I do like that they don't reveal it, like what it actually said until the end.
I really
like
liked that.
Such a good like little touch in that way.
Yeah.
Going back a little earlier, I'm just going through some of these lines. when Juno's telling her parents about the pregnancy, J.K. Simmons has a really great line who says, "I thought you were the kind of girl who knew when to say." He says when to say when, I think, but maybe it's when to say no, or the phrasing is a bit interesting. But Juno says, "I don't really know what kind of girl I am," which is just like the delivery of that. I like grounded me so much in the character, at least. I think that's one of Elliot Page's best moments in here. And yeah, I mean, the parents are saying anything but this, like after when she leaves, like it's definitely your worst nightmare.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Or could be portrayed that way. Yeah, the Bateman stuff is interesting because like at first you're having fun while they're like playing music together.
They set that up really well.
Yeah,
very smart. Yeah,
because he does have enough of the charm to like not be playing a bad guy every time he's in a film. So it's not like a certain casting where you're like,
oh boy, yeah, it's not like he's like Rob Lowe or something.
Yeah. Yeah, we have all the different like seasons going through this, which is just like a somewhat nice way to break it up. It's interesting how both of these films are really obsessed with like, okay, we're gonna like just try to show the process of it, and like most of the film's gonna be spent in the day to day and the pre-planning, and you know you can only plan so much before the chaos hits, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the seasons thing also reminded me of that movie 500 Days of Summer, which I wonder if it came out in 2007 as well.
That's a good question.
I feel like it did because it was very similar. It had like, 500 Days of Summer obviously has to say like summer, fall.
Well, and they had the day count too, right?
It was very similar.
Yeah, like the days that are summer and then the days that are after the relationship with summer.
It was very similar, and like the drawing turning into real life. I wonder if one of the two were inspired by the other.
500 Days of Summer was 2009.
Oh.
So, but it does seem like a movie that very possibly was inspired by Juno.
Yeah.
At the very least, the producers on it were probably looking to Juno to be like, what works? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, aesthetically, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah, very quickly, the new parents buy a bunch of baby stuff. I saw baby Bajorn in their pile of things, which is I don't. What was very funny was they also had baby Bajorn in Knocked Up.
I didn't notice it.
I saw
Juno.
these like two like product things, and I was like, oh my god, like what's going on?
They also both touch on what to expect when you're expecting a book.
Yes,
yeah.
which that's got to be the like #1 pregnancy book, right?
Yeah,
like, or at least the title that everybody thinks of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like they get to the Juno being named after Zeus's wife.
I didn't know that.
I had no idea that's where that name came from, and the little story there is just nice. Of just saying like Zeus's wife would be like like someone strong who wouldn't take his shit. Like
Cool. Nice, that's good. Yeah.
But Juno runs into Vanessa, the adopted mother, at the mall. And that was like that's definitely one of Jennifer Garner's like best scenes, because it's just such a great meeting of these two forces where she's got all the anxiety of motherhood on her mind, and like the questions of boundary. And then, Juno's just like, oh, come on. Everyone is touching my stomach. Like, it's me. Like, shut up. Like, come here.
Yeah.
And then even like you get the real vulnerability of like, oh, the baby's not kicking for me. And then Juno's like, okay, come in and talk. And then, it all tightens up in such a nice way.
Yeah.
And the scene just really, they hold it. And, she gets to have that moment with the kid, and then it ends. It's just like, it's great that, they don't try to undercut that with like a joke at the end or anything else. Like this really, I was surprised. It didn't feel like a comedy to me, like like really at all even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I walked away from it thinking, oh, I guess that wasn't a comedy. As well.
It's marketed as a comedy.
I think.
Well, I think I would probably say rom-com.
Yeah.
But like that's the thing is like there's not like the Michael Cera romance isn't the point of this either, especially because like Juno is already pregnant when the film starts, so it probably is just straight up a drama.
Right.
But like if this was the Golden Globes, they would probably run it in best comedy because they love to do that, like just to be like, oh, it's got a couple jokes, like throw it in there, like yeah. Juno, what she's with her girlfriend at lunch, just grabbing everything off, like off the.
That was a fun little touch. Yeah.
This is we have the fight. There's a really good line where Juno's like, Katrina gave me the stink eye in like in homeroom or something, and then Michael Cera's like, no, that's just her face. That's what she looks like, and they cut to her, and you're just like, that is so unfortunate. Whoever that is.
It was such a great insert. I didn't expect it in this movie too, because I feel like that's the type of thing that you would see more so now or 5 years ago maybe, but not 15 years ago.
No.
Yeah, that made it feel like a comedy, that scene. Her face doing that. That's very like, I feel like an SNL character.
I think a studio executive like mandated to put that in. He's like, I need a joke right here. We've got so Mark Jason Bateman's character gives Juno a Yuki comic. It's like a pregnant Japanese like superhero. Which I didn't read it as that weird in the moment. Now I'm just thinking back on that. Like what was that? Like
what did you guys think of that?
I don't know.
Like trying to figure it out. I mean, it's cool. She was like, oh cool. Yeah. I feel not as
it's part. I think it's part of the whole. You know, they are connecting right on a genuine level. Yeah. But. Yeah, all I say is like now in different contexts, you're like, is this just weird? Like, was he fetishizing Juno as his new superhero wife or something? Or like, I don't know.
Yeah. The whole thing was definitely weird with them too.
Yeah, I definitely think I got an inkling of weirdness with it. Just like the way he was saying that he thought of her when he saw it. I thought was a very romantic sort of way rather than a surrogate mother of my child kind of way.
And this is the scene where he like comes through with his feelings. Mm-hmm. So it probably was even intended as a romantic gesture.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
I wonder, one thing I was trying to figure out what they're trying to show, is he a guy chasing his youth and that's why he's so attracted to her? Or is he attracted to her because she's technically carrying his baby? Or was it?
I think it's the youth. He doesn't seem concerned about the parenthood of it all, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting. You're like, what's his plan? Her to have the baby, give it to Vanessa, and then the two of them split off?
Yeah, because he was like, I'm leaving Vanessa.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do with the baby then?
Yeah, I didn't realize that before, but he's definitely chasing his youth. Like the way he dresses, the fact that he won't give up the dream of being in a band, even though he's loaded off of commercials. Right. I think at that point, I feel like you're not going to make it.
It's just an unfulfilled dream, right? Like, I'm sure, No,
but it's part of like having comic books around and, horror films. Like, not that like you can't be an adult with these things, but just that like they're the signifiers for a less mature artistic palette, right?
Right. Yeah, I wonder what Jennifer Garner's character saw in him, because I feel like they're so different in every way. So like, what was the attraction there?
What was it? I was thinking I think they've been together long enough for her to have changed and him to have stayed the same.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like her career wasn't as, far as it was. Mm-hmm. She says, wearing business attire and stuff.
Yeah.
You'd assume she'd be able to take care of this kid by herself.
Yeah, definitely.
At least emotionally. I feel like if they did even keep the baby, she'd be the one obviously taking care of the baby. Which it's better off that she's on her own. Because you see a lot of moms nowadays, it's not uncommon, moms do most of the work with children.
Oh yeah,
That's true. Yeah.
So I feel like, yeah, I really like that now that I think about it. I'm like, oh, I'm glad she had to raise the baby on her own because she would have been doing that anyway with that man if they stayed married. So that's good.
yeah, true.
Yeah. That's why it's more of a happy ending
Yeah.
for her to raise it on its own rather than also having to raise him.
Yeah. And I'm glad he left her too, because I think a lot of times people don't leave because they're like, oh, I can't do this on my own type
Right.
of thing.
Mm.
And you feel like raising a child has to be something you do with a partner, but not necessarily.
But just like Juno, like that's the beauty of that note is like, if you're in, I'm in. Like, you know, it only needs to be the two of us. And like, you know, I'm already doing this crazy thing. Like, why can't you, you know, fulfill your dream too?
True. And that, I think that kind of goes back with the Michael Cera thing is he wasn't really a part of her pregnancy at all or helped her with it. But I feel like in that situation, she didn't really let him. Or do you think?
Yeah, no, you're right. Cause there's, you know, around here, you also get the really good scene where Juno comes home, and is telling her dad, like, I don't know if I like believe in like long-term relationships anymore.
Right.
Which is like an incredible scene just because like he's divorced. And so like, he's like, okay, I know like I can't just be your dad and say it's this way. Like, but even with that, he approaches it with a lot of depth. And I think what he says to her is what allows her to have enough trust to go out and seek back Michael Cera, his character, you know?
Yeah.
It's funny. We watched Knocked Up first and then watched Juno.
I keep doing this. I keep flipping the order. Like I set up an order for a double and then I watch it reverse.
Oh, so if you were to like air it in a theater, you would air Juno first and then Knocked Up?
That was my mentality, but also like I think Knocked Up is since it's the longer film, I would probably put it first.
Okay.
Although I don't know. I think after Knocked Up, Juno, like I actually do think, sorry, I'll reset here, but I think I would put Juno first just because some of these beats don't feel as great the second time through. And at least with Knocked Up, it feels like they're telling jokes through like more
through the whole
of it.
thing. Yeah, that's true.
Even though it's not a very jokey film either.
Yeah.
What order would you put it in? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. I think, I mean, the reason we did it in that order was I looked it up and Knocked Up came out first. So I was like,
yeah,
let's watch it the way America watched it. Right. And it was interesting to see, I forget what it was, but something happened in Knocked Up with like some sort of technology. And then in Juno, you see like a slightly more advanced technology. I forget what, it's just like a small thing that you wouldn't pick up.
Could be the
unless it's
ultrasounds or
15
something.
years.
Like
I think that might have been what it was. Where
Oh yeah. So in
Knocked Up, the ultrasound, he goes inside her.
that's right.
And then Juno,
the jelly.
they go on top. And I don't know if that's...
Well, the joke is in Knocked Up, the gynecologist opens her legs and says, "You look just like your sister."
Oh, I missed that line.
Which is, you know, after he's met her and talked to her, and then he's looking down.
Yeah.
And then he pulls out the rod and puts the cream on top. It's like, it's very clearly supposed to be an innuendo. So I think that tech was probably...
Okay, that makes sense.
They were probably doing the jelly belly by that point.
Yeah.
But like, Apatow's like, bring it back. Like, you know?
I think there's also a line too in there where somebody says something about him taking so long down there. Like it might even be him who's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I took a while," or whatever. Like,
yeah, I did. There is another link between these films, which is like both of the husbands are like music guys. Like they're making their living in the music industry. Paul Rudd's character, like it's expanded on in This Is 40 a lot more, but he's like a record producer. And he's seeing these bands and stuff. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Like both of the guys that are fucking around, not doing shit they want to do, or like,
are the
music
musicians?
is their like, way into that.
That's funny.
I mean, we get to Juno winning Bleeker back over, fills his mailbox with orange Tic Tacs, which is just a fun little gag to see, I guess. They just have like a small little scene in the middle of the track field. Kind of confessing love to each other. It's cute.
It was a cute little scene. Yeah.
Then pretty quickly Juno's water breaks. Thundercats a go is like a line they all yell. You're just like, okay, sir.
Yeah, I feel like there were a lot of lines in the movie where I was like, all right, fine. It's not taking me out of the film, but sure.
And we were talking about the soundtrack. The soundtrack works really well just about everywhere, but they play the monkey on your shoulder line like as Juno's giving birth, and it's just like it just feels like it kind of undercuts it a bit. Like it works when the baby's like out and they're like, look at the baby, you know, or whatever, but like while she's like, and like pushing, and they're like, "You're the monkey on my back, on my shoulder." They're just kind of like, all right. Like, don't know about that.
That's true.
I much preferred this delivery scene to the knocked up.
Oh my god, scene. I know.
Oh, that scarred me.
Well, the knocked up delivery scene is the reason why. What's her face? Sandra Bullock was originally going to be in that film.
No way, as Katherine Heigl's.
As Katherine Heigl's character.
Wow.
And the delivery they were planning to use real shots of like babies being delivered, and like she was like, no, essentially like I won't do it if you do that kind of thing. Like that was her line.
How come? Did she say why?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they're trying to portray it as looking like her, and she's like, I just don't want people to see me in that way, or like,
I'm surprised that they died on that hill. Yeah, that they weren't like, all right, we don't need that stuff. We'll take Sandra Bullock.
I think it's part of the like in that film, they are really trying to show like Jay Baruchel's character walks in and sees that, and he's like, I'm forever scarred. Like they're really trying to drive home some of the severity of it, or the reality of it, I guess. But I agree. They almost got an NC-17 rating because of it. Just not really worth it. In the end.
No.
Yeah, I wish they showed it so many times. It wasn't even just like once. It was like again. I screamed the first time I saw it. I was like, oh god, that's disgusting.
I know, and I'm pretty sure I saw it as a kid too, because I actually had seen Knocked Up, and I was like, but that's life.
It's a shame too, because Paul Rudd movies for the most part are fairly family friendly. Like, I mean, like there's a bunch of cursing throughout it, but
I think like Anchorman is a little less, and like maybe the 40-Year-Old Virgin a little less, but yeah, I mean,
isn't Anchorman Adam McKay?
Yeah, you're saying Paul Rudd.
Oh, did I say? I meant to say Judd Apatow. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was like, half of Paul Rudd, like, sure. But I'm like, Wanderlust.
No. Any of his David Wayne movies, which is all of David Wayne's movies. Right. Yeah.
You are right. Most of Judd Apatow stuff is very family friendly. I mean, even the produced stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I like that they showed it. And like some part of my brain, I'm like, oh, good, you should show the realities of giving birth. But I was like, I didn't need to see it so many times.
It feels like a good news article.
Yeah, right.
You're sitting through it and you're like, I don't know, man.
I don't know if I need to see it though.
It is though. We are kind of at the beginning of Judd Apatow paving the way for what a real movie looks like. Is that correct? Or had he kind of already done it at that point? And by real movie, I mean like a movie that's like, where everything feels real and the dialogue is real, like for rom-coms.
I would say James L. Brooks like kind of pioneers a bit of that a little more. But Apatow certainly is the one who like, is carrying it, and it is what other people are imitating a lot,
Right now, at least, yeah.
I just think like James L. Brooks deals with the drama of it all really well. And Apatow just drops the ball a little bit on that side. But yeah, I mean, I think he does pretty good. I was saying this on the last episode actually, but I think his produced movies are better than his directed movies, like in general. But he only has like about 8 directing credits. I mean, it's 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, Funny People. Man, I'm struggling here. He did, yeah. I should have his written down.
Yeah, I should.
But yeah.
Yeah, he's done stuff.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. We can, let's we'll wrap up Juno here though. So Juno's giving birth. Michael Cera's character runs from his track meet to get there. And we revealed the note. And then, just the end of it is Juno it's summer now. She's pulling up her bike. And the two of them played the Monkey on Your Shoulder song, like just acoustically to each other, which is very sweet.
I'm curious to hear what you guys think, but I felt like them playing the song together would have been more powerful for me if I hadn't just heard the song.
That was part of what I was saying too. Is like it did not land in the pregnancy scene, but then I was like, oh, this is a perfect like end though.
Yeah.
Especially because like they just play it uninterrupted. It's one long take zooming out, and they're staring into each other's eyes the whole time. It's just like it's very theatrical in that way.
But, that's true.
How did Juno's character grow? I'm trying to think of like her character arc. Like, how did she change?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of like the adventure for Juno is like about trusting in themselves. Like, you know, because with the baby, especially at the beginning, there's a lot of like people telling Juno what to do with it. Like Juno goes to get it aborted, and then there's like her classmates like picketing the Planned Parenthood, you know, or whatever it is. And it's just, to me, is like really hard to track what the line of thinking is with Juno. Like, she just doing this because, you know, she feels it's right, or just because it's what's happened. Yeah. But I think a lot of like the movie is like Juno learning how to roll with the punches of life, and also, I mean, it is that can I trust anyone to be in a relationship? Can I trust myself to be in a relationship? I mean, in a lot of ways, like giving up the kid could be metaphor for like being alone and like putting a lot of those things to rest. And so like at first, like not even wanting the kid can be like, no fucking way am I going to have that level of connection. And then like, the thing about love is, you know, you can have it for a certain amount of time, but you've also got to let it go at one point, or the other person does, right? Yeah. Just because one of us is going to outlive the other in some capacity. So she gets some trust in that, I would say. And then like the further trust is like, now could I share this life with someone and, you know, accept that version of it all.
Yeah. Damn, Lewis. That's deep. I was like, what? Love doesn't for everybody, you're right. That's true. I
mean, that's all like, I mean, that could just be my reading on it right now too, though. Because I think it's a lot of it is just that coming of age stuff, right? Just the moment I'm in, I have these anxieties, life seems, you know, untamable, right? And like, now I'm just getting a hold on things. Now things are a little better. That's, that's enough of a story, whether it's got, you know, metaphors and layers on it too. Cool. Take a quick break.
Sure.
Yeah, cool. Okay, we are recording.
All right.
Oh yeah.
Okay, we are back with Knocked Up, which we did start a little bit on already. But this is directed by Judd Apatow. It's one of his few films. We did look up his filmography while we were off. Okay, yeah. So this is coming in between The 40-Year-Old Virgin, which is Judd Apatow's feature directorial debut, and I'm already forgetting it, Funny People. Yeah, wait for it, people. Which I think these are like some of his most emotional films. Knocked Up, and This Is 40 are definitely like very grounded with their characters. Funny people too, though. Have you seen Funny People?
I haven't.
I don't think I have either.
Funny People is probably my favorite Judd Apatow film, and you should go see it. I did get to catch it in theaters like when I was a kid for whatever reason. It stars Adam Sandler, and he's playing like an Adam Sandler-like character.
Whoa.
And it's essentially like he's like, I've kind of been in all these big movies, and I want to get back to my roots. I want to get back to stand-up. And so they go onto the stand-up circuit. They film tons of like upcoming stand-up comedians, which end up being like Aubrey Plaza before she's like really in Parks and Rec. It's got Aziz Ansari in it too. Like, yeah, it's nice. But they like got some really good upcomers, and what was smart, and this is what Judd Apatow does well, is he just rolled the camera in front of a bunch of audiences and said, "Do real stand-up," and like and we're not just gonna make the same crowd listen to the same joke 20 times. We're going to go to different clubs and get actual genuine reactions. And it makes all those scenes like really come alive. And it's, we'll talk about the shortcomings and the better things that Judd Apatow does, but how he deals with that naturalism, like really makes or breaks his films for me.
I feel like he did that in The Big Sick too, right? That's Judd Apatow as well, right?
He produced that.
Oh, he produced it.
Yeah.
But they also do the comic scene, I feel like, in that movie. Like, there's A.D. Bryant and Camille, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
That's how Camille meets his wife in the film, right?
Yeah.
She's heckling him.
Yeah.
It's a very fun scene.
Also kind of how he's able to start to make up with the parents. Or the parents, vice versa. The parents start to come around to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, Big Sick's good.
Yeah.
Next time.
I have my thoughts.
But yeah.
That's for another.
Exactly. So Judd Apatow also produced Walk Hard this year, which we did talk about last week. But I like this movie too, but I think Walk Hard is the better.
I think Walk Hard's incredible.
Yeah. Which just goes to show. I mean, it's Judd Apatow has a good group of people, and I'm glad he's a good producer that can even get these projects made. But yeah. So here we've got Wu-Tang Clan opening up the film, thinking about doing it raw. And we just got all the boys of this film hanging out. So we got Seth Rogen's character. He's playing Ben. Everyone else is pretty much just named after the actual actor's name, like Jason for Jason Segel, Jay for Jay Baruchel,
Jonah was even Jonah.
Jonah for Jonah, and Martin for Martin Starr. But this is just like a classic guys being guys hanging out in the opening credits. They're jumping into the dirtiest pool of all time. It's like green. And they're like hitting each other with pool noodles to like make them fall in, and smoking bongs, and the gas mask bongs, like whatever. They're just they're just frat guys basically.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that scene, or even Jason Segal's character throughout the movie, was just I hadn't seen this movie before, but that specifically after him being in the Muppets movie and knowing that he wrote it so that he could be in the Muppets movie, and then just seeing him just be this degenerate human.
Absolutely.
It was a fun flip for me.
No, it is.
To experience.
And like, he's not the best guy in Forgetting Sarah Marshall, but he's a nice guy in that film at least. And like here he hits on every girl he sees in every scene that he's in. Like without every one of his lines is like about getting tail or like making fun of his buddy. I mean, and there's like a great bit later with Paul Rudd's character when he finally meets Leslie Mann. He's met Leslie Mann, right? And he's just like, are you her husband? And then he slams like the front door on him, turning him away. It's just it's all really good. I mean, this is a classic group of Apatow kids. Like like 3 or 4 Freaks and Geeks people, right?
I say it felt like watching Freaks and Geeks at some moments, just like all the character or the actors. Yeah.
Because you have Rogan, you have James Franco in a cameo, and then you have Martin Starr, all of them at least, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So like this is, we brought up Superbad earlier too. But Rogan and Jonah Hill are both in both of these films, right?
Oh yeah.
And here Jonah Hill is playing Seth Rogen's like contemporary. And in Superbad, he's playing like a high schooler. And a big part of the Superbad story is that Seth Rogen wrote the script and wanted to play that role originally and just kind of aged out of it. And also like, because of his like his height and like his appearance in general, he's like, okay, I'm not going to look like a teenager standing next to Michael Cera.
Right.
Or Christopher Mintz. And so they give it to Jonah instead. But it's very interesting. Like Seth Rogen's like 25 in this. And he is super young still.
They look so. How old is Katherine Heigl in that movie?
Ooh, that's a better question. I didn't look it up because I would imagine she's maybe a little older, just because it seems like they're trying to, with her character, show someone that's a little more established in their career.
Right.
But you know the way that Hollywood casts women, like who's to say like what her age is?
It was. I like the line where she was like, "Oh yeah, he looks 33," because when she's, I think Leslie Mann asks how old he is, and he's 23. I was like, "He's 23."
I know they say that in the in the script too. Yeah.
Yeah. Shocked me.
It is. We set a we also show Katherine Heigl's character pretty early on. Judd Apatow's using the most cliche opening shot like for a character, which is them, hitting the buzzer on their alarm clock.
Yeah. Here we go.
Which that's fine. We quickly learn that Katherine Heigl's character is living with basically her older sister and her husband. Pete and Debbie, played by Paul Rudd and Leslie Mann. So Katherine Heigl takes the kids to school early on, and there's like a killer line. These kids are Judd Apatow's real kids too. Maud and Iris Apatow. Not sure who's the older or the younger.
Maud's the older. She's on Euphoria. That's how I know that.
Okay, thank you. This is why we brought you in. But there's a killer line where the kid just starts talking about how she was Googling murder.
That's good. That was fun.
Just feels like as far as this timing of stuff goes, like maybe the first time a lot of parents thought, oh, that's a thing like a kid
that
can
someone
do,
can
right?
do. Yeah.
Which I feel like it does play as a pretty good joke.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
It helps set the time too, like you said,
definitely.
very much so. Yeah.
We set up this bet. Martin Starr can't shave his beard or his face, or he's got to pay the rent for everyone else in the apartment.
Yeah.
Just great. Like, what are both of these people's lives up to, right? Like, they're working on a watch it for the plot
right
type website where they're talking about where women undress in movies and stuff.
That's one thing that I noticed about both Juno and this movie, like with Jennifer Garner and the guy that she was with. I was like, what did she see in him? Because it feels like they're so different.
Right.
And then even in this movie, I'm like, what does Katherine Heigl's character see in this guy?
Truly.
At all.
Yeah.
When she says, I love you, I'm like, why? Like, what?
Yeah.
What about him is...
To me, it's interesting because it feels like this, like, they're setting up the immaturity versus the maturity. And I think, like, as you get older, like, maybe you're a guy who does identify with this is how me and my bros hang out. And, some people got out of that phase a while ago. Some people are still in that phase. But, like, I think there's a level of relatability there. It is a bit reductive in the idea that, like, it's just like, will these boys ever unsocialize themselves from the type of behavior they've been taught is okay forever? Sorry, I'm losing a bit of the thread here, but it's It is interesting. I mean, what do you like? I don't think every guy is like this group of guys.
Agreed.
And the way they're setting it up is like every guy is this until they become an adult, like women are adults.
Yeah.
But then they also treat women as like hysterical at some points, and you know, kind of, yeah, like just the way that we
very heavily plays into gender roles, or like the idea of like this is what a woman is and this is what a guy is. Women are always mature and don't go through that, which is really interesting, because then I think what that era 2007 is when that like bro comedy guys just get stoned is so big.
Absolutely.
And then I think once we got into like, I feel like senior year and stuff, then it started becoming women being like stoners, like Broad City and that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Then he started seeing
evening
that.
the field in that way.
Yeah. Which is really interesting, actually.
No, I know. And like we, you know, a lot of the thousands, like, so the 90s is writing like a lot of nihilism, and just culture. And like, the thousands got a lot of meta humor, just kind of like, be irreverent towards the material you're working on. And like now I feel like we've kind of gone back to like sentimentality as like a big important thing in like the type of media we consume. But it's just it is a weird era of just like it's kind of the peak of like gross out and shock humor. You know?
Well, you that cut to that they do when or when they cut back to Seth Rogen at the end of his phone call, the I'm pregnant phone call,
right? And
you see like the whole scene being played out where Jay Baruchel is like jerking off, and there's like
they're all humping the couch,
like, pussy and stuff, and it's just like, oh, like that's supposed to be hilarious, like that's supposed to be the punchline of punchlines for that stretch of scenes,
right?
And it's like it got a giggle out of me, but I wasn't like, oh my god.
Back then, when you were watching, you're probably like, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the only reason I laughed during that scene was like the dramatic irony, right? Like where you're just like, like he thinks he's getting laid again, and like his whole life's about to change. Nothing about like what they are doing is funny.
Right.
And that is I had read a review and someone put this so well where they said there's points where this film feels like it tips from being like about the bullied and being about the bullies. Which is like it's just there's always a fine line between like hate speech and like, you know, what is funny, you know, what can you play around with?
Yeah.
And again with last week's episode, Blades of Glory, like Will Ferrell can tie that line like nobody else, but like other people do the same things he does, and it comes across bad. And you know, I it's not that it's bad at points, it just feels like the male perspective is so forward in this that like there are points that just the female side of it gets a little lost, and you do, you know, start to think like, who's telling the story, you know?
You see that a lot too, like even The Simpsons, Family Guy, it's always like super hot, put together wife, and then the guy's just like a total whatever. And then even with like this movie, it's kind of the same. That's why it kind of irritated me a little bit, because I was like, what does she see in him, and why does he get this huge like redemption arc, I want to say, or like chance to become, you know, great, whereas like she's always been, I would say, a catch, like a great catch,
right? Well, to me it's part of that whole like, is this an anti-abortion film? Like at the end of the day, like I don't know if he's like trying to make a statement of it, but like these films are about like people that are like, I don't want to have the kid, but I'm gonna have it, like type stories. And
that's interesting.
It's like inherently, is there something wrong here of just like it's about, no, as a woman, you should settle down and have a family, even if it's like with a sloppy guy.
That's what I was trying to figure out. Because when they go for brunch the next morning after sleeping together, they have that conversation where he's telling her about what he does and how he's like from Canada and he can't like legally work here. And Yeah, he was
Nothing
like,
you
I
know
basically have
anything about?
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. He's like, I have like a porn site basically, and you just like, and she's grossed out too. But then she decides to have a kid with him, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit of it where she is, so out of her depth, and like she's on the phone with him, and he's like, I'll be here for you in whatever capacity like you need me to be. I obviously have no fucking clue what to do.
Yeah.
But like, just tell me and I'll do stuff. And she's like, I really, she breaks down crying. She's like, I really appreciate that. And and you just get that feeling that like maybe there wasn't anyone else in her life that just said, we can do this, and that's what she sees in him.
I guess because even in the beginning, he freaks out though when she first tells him. She's like,
"Oh yeah,"
he's like, "You told me you told me to just stick it in," and I was like, "Oh my god, he's so dumb that
he straight up yells at her."
Which that's a really interesting bit too, because I think they actually handle that somewhat well. It's the question of consent here, right? Like because having sex without a condom when you have agreed to have a condom, is rape.
Yeah.
I mean, straight up. But they let him off the hook and her off the hook because they're both inebriated and they have this weird communication. It's not great, and I would not read it in that situation as I can take this fucking condom off.
Yeah,
but they at least like set it up in a way that you can be like, there's not too much baggage around that, right? Like they want to excuse it so that you can get to the other part of the film, which is probably more important.
Yeah, I think they did just enough for me to
hand wave
to
it.
be like fine, but not happy about saying fine.
Exactly.
It's like because when I watched the scene where like he takes it off and throws it, it's like, oh, he's a big dick for doing it. Like it does not. Yeah, it feels like he's just like, yeah, fuck it. Like it doesn't even seem like he's responding to her in the moment of her being like, just do it. Him being like, oh yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, because that's not what I understood.
That's how I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, because when she's like, just do it already, that to me says hurry up.
Exactly.
Right?
They're on the same thread of what they were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, in 08 or 07, it's probably, this was definitely enough to not,
easily. Yeah.
Yeah. So like pretty early, we find out Katherine Heigl's character is working at E! News. There's a bit with Ryan Seacrest where he like breaks down, which I think is like, because I had seen this in 07 or on Netflix, and I feel like I liked it better then because he was all over the place, and this was actually just funny to see him not be composed and put together. But you see it now and you're like, oh my God, like it feels like a lot of red flags of just like an actor melting down on set. You're like, yeesh.
Yeah, and then he says something about like Jessica Alba's nose job. He's like, don't bring up her nose job. And then she shows up in the movie later, and I'm like, I don't think Jessica Alba's had a nose job.
No.
I wonder how she felt about that joke.
Yeah, and also like part of that whole dialogue is like, that's why it kind of felt uncomfortable to me. It's like, oh, she doesn't want to talk about her boobs. She doesn't want to talk about her nose. Like, what the fuck does she want to talk about? Iraq? And they're very much being like, yeah. If you're a woman and you don't want to talk about like these, what society says is fucking important. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it didn't really do anything for the story too, right?
Exactly.
Like it doesn't come back at any point.
And that's like a moment that feels more hateful, on the edge than really jokey.
Definitely.
It doesn't feel like they're punching up, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a dig at female celebrities, I guess.
Yeah.
Then
you get the executives pulling in Kristen Wiig and Alan Tudyk. Pulling in her, yeah, both
Devin and I were just like blown away by Kristen Wiig's performance.
She was so good,
so good. Because I wasn't the whole time I was thinking, this movie's not really that funny. The jokes aren't really that good. And then Kristen Wiig
sliding it under.
It's just her performance.
She's insane. Yeah. Just the subtleties of it. I don't know how you do that.
It's the type of thing like you've seen other people do that, and it's not funny in the least. But she's like even at the end, she heightens it where she's like, don't ever do this to us again, because I'd love to be friends with you. Yeah. Like, where is this lady's head at?
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, and there's a really great cast of supporting players. I mean, I think to me, that's the most impressive thing about all these Apatow produced and directed joints is like he genuinely gets all the talent to come in, even for the B, C, and D roles.
Yeah.
Which like I feel like there's a lot of celebrity casting nowadays, but it doesn't feel like any movie has a comedy roster that's this extensive.
But even even the people he gets before they're anybody too. Like Ken Jeong had not done The Hangover yet, but he played the doctor that delivers the baby.
Right.
And I think there were a few others too, where it was like, oh yeah, they hadn't done the thing that got them their fame yet, but they were in the movie.
I mean, Alan Tudyk's a great example because, like, I mean, he's in stuff like Dodgeball. He plays a pirate in that, and he's voiced a lot of stuff in Disney animated movies. But he's not a guy who's broken through in a major way, right?
That's true.
And maybe like for every Alan Tudyk, you have a Kristen Wiig who does blow through too. So then in retrospect, you're like, how the fuck did he get this girl in the scene? But yeah. He does a good job with looking at talent. I mean, and that's something I've always like. So with Apatow, he comes from the Gary Shandling school. Gary Shandling hired Judd Apatow when he was essentially a high schooler. Judd Apatow, for a school newspaper, he used to interview celebrities, and like it was the type of era where like he would just call up stand-up comedians on landlines and they would just talk to him, like, because it was just one of those, if you could figure out how to get to these people, like they weren't being overly bombarded with stuff, and he would go to clubs and talk to people, and he has a story with he takes a page of comedy jokes to George Carlin, and Carlin basically just reads through them and crosses off some stuff and hands them back and is like, yeah, come back the next day. I'll give you some more notes, basically. And he starts writing jokes for different comedians, but eventually gets hooked up with Shandling, and it's where he directs his first like anything. He directs an episode of the Larry Sanders Show that he was working on, but he had wrote on that show for a couple of years too. So, and Shandling was always really great about getting new comedians and new talent onto his projects. And I think that's like a big part of his just philosophy, was like mentoring in general. And I like to think that's what, Apatow's done too. Cause like with Seth Rogen, at least, like Seth Rogen has his own production company now. And like, you don't see him getting to that point without, Apatow putting up the money for Pineapple Express and getting the connections up for like all these hits,
Yeah.
But then the other half of it's just like, like the philosophies that he is teaching in comedy have like somewhat gone out of style now. And a lot of it is not based on physical comedy or any spectacle. A lot of it is like dialogue heavy, scenario heavy stuff, which is a lot cheaper to shoot, which is why it's kind of taken over the comedy realm. But I also think it's a big reason why we don't have comedies in movie theaters anymore, where everybody goes and packs in the house to laugh together, just because it plays better on a screen. I mean, there's no visual spectacle. There's no reason to attend in a theater.
You could watch this while scrolling on your phone and not miss anything.
Truly. And that is like one of the other shortcomings of Apatow, is just like, it's just not visually that interesting. It's funny. I actually wrote down for the final shot of this movie, wow, that's a good shot. I was surprised.
You're like, oh, he knows how to do that.
And I was like, oh yeah, that's the first time I wrote that like down.
That's funny. Yeah.
That's what you sacrifice when you just set up the camera and let people improvise, right? Cool. Big tangent aside, we get Allison and Debbie going out to the club pretty early. They get cut. They cut through the line right away where the boys are in the front. Everybody gets pretty drunk here. This is where the meetup happens. We kind of we briefly touch this stuff, but Ben and Allison get plastered and hook up. There's a part where Jason Segal's looking at at I can't fucking think of her name. Sorry.
Leslie Mann.
Yeah, at Leslie Mann's phone, and she's got like a razor, and he's like, "Oh, that's a cool phone." Like,
Oh no way.
just like a great throwaway.
That's good.
Yeah. I used to have a razor. Got stolen.
Yeah, I did write. I DK how I feel about how Judd Apatow writes about women. Just like when they're like sitting in here talking in the club about like, it's not bad, but it's like, oh, do guys find I'm pretty? And like, they're thoughts people have when they get old.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he's had that literal conversation with his wife, who is the actor standing there saying the lines.
Right.
But
it feels kind of like you're just like, they might be talking about something else here,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah. Hadn't she just gotten a promotion then, or?
Right. That's what they're out. They're celebrating the promotion.
Yeah, you can tell he just doesn't have much or know how to say much from the female perspective.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's why Trainwreck, which is probably like his only like real female lead.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's co-written by Schumer, and that's probably very intentional.
Yeah.
I mean, Bridesmaids, he produced, but that's not, like I could never see him churning out Bridesmaids as a script.
Definitely not. No.
Yeah. So they have sex to Rock Lobster, which is it's all right.
Yeah.
What song was that?
Rock Lobster. Doot, 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 doot,
I don't remember it. But I can tell from that it
man.
wasn't a great choice.
Yeah, it's I think it was supposed to be bad on purpose, like to show that, oh, the sex isn't that great.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's some interesting lines too while they're having sex, like and pulling away from it. Like Rogen's like, oh, I just doubled my time.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of like, just.
It didn't land.
The delivery of that was really weird too. I remember pointing that out. He was like, "Oh wow, I just doubled my time." Like the way he said that.
Yeah.
But it was very like a really bad read. It felt like
almost as if it had been like dubbed over.
It probably had been ADR.
Yeah.
I mean, even then, it's just like were they watching the sex scene and they're like, this needs to be funnier or something?
I mean, maybe, but I feel like you could make it shorter rather than make it funnier in that situation.
I fully agree. They're at the diner and Rogen comes in and he's like, I just puked, and it's on that whole chain of thought, just like, oh, I feel better when you puke, and like, oh, do you like weed? Going down that whole line of establishing exactly who he is and why these two are diametrically opposed, right? I mean, what's interesting in this dialogue is that they do set up that they both hate what each other does, in a very like, she hates the fetishization of women as only physical objects, right? Because of course. And then he hates the drama that gets created about like celebrity stars and the gossip and all of that. Which like that was a thing I didn't see necessarily when they're both in their jobs, but they say it outright, which is,
it's nice that you get that.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like that's what the movie Don John is about. If you've seen Don John,
really?
Like it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt's one directorial movie, and he wrote it too, but he plays like a New Jersey meathead, and he's like addicted to porn, and Scarlett Johansson is his like, crazy girl who loves rom-coms, and he's like, I hate these rom-coms, and she's like, I hate that you love porn. Like,
it's such an interesting
what a movie.
thing, yeah.
But that's like, that feels like where these where the discussion is, like with these gender optics, right? Like we both have our fantasies, we both have our vices, like.
Yeah, I just feel like that's also another thing that kind of irked me a little, because it's like, no, what he's doing is actually like gross. Yeah. And what she's doing is,
badass.
It's for the most part, she's like made a career for herself, and like it's not
right.
really harming society that much.
Right, and you find out that his whole business concept has already been done
Yes.
too. So it's like, it's not even like he's innovating on schlock.
Right, right.
When he started shitting on her job, that made me so angry again too, because I was like, oh my God, what does she, like, how are these two going to end up together? Like, how can we redeem him as a person after he just like starts endlessly like shitting on something that she's passionate about and doing?
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, we get a lot of time jumps in here that are like really subtle. Like, the first one's here where she mentions, I'm gonna go interview so and so, and then the next scene is her interviewing someone, but it's not that person. It's James Franco.
Right.
And you're like, oh, was that like a mistake? And then they reveal through context clues. Okay, it's been a month. They haven't really talked. And this is where she finds out she's pregnant, right?
Yeah.
So she's in the editing room. Bill Hader is the editor.
Great.
Another one of those, like, it's not that he wasn't big in 07 or known for his SNL stuff, but it's just like he was not on the same caliber as today. Like you cannot lock him down for like a bit role like this.
No.
Yeah. He's so fucking funny.
He's great.
He has a line like so she pukes because she's pregnant, and then he's like, are you feeling okay? And then he asks her, like, are you like pregnant? And then she's like, I don't know. And then like he pulls up the phone. You don't even see him. This is all background audio.
Incredible.
And like his delivery is so fucking funny. You can tell he riffed this whole thing. There's no way it was in the script. He goes, BK, hey.
Yeah.
And he's like, Allison just pulled up. She just puked. That's what I said. How does she look right now? Like she just found out she's pregnant.
Yeah. So well done.
Just saying exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
One of the few like pieces of dialogue that really works in this, I think.
And that works also because of its visual component as well.
Right.
Because
you're just staring at her
You're staring
face.
at her and you're hearing him off screen.
Yeah.
And
Great,
that might be why
point.
it actually works so well. It's because he's using
good visual framing.
eyes.
And
Yeah.
And that could have been an 80-yard bit too. I mean, for all we know.
Very possible. Yeah, very.
Yeah. I mean, we get Allison calling Ben. We kind of talked about this scene already. Delivering the news, but it's just not. I mean, there's one line where Rogen's in there and she says, I'm pregnant. And he says, fuck off. Like right away. Which actually, like, I kind of like as this gut reaction.
That's great. Yeah. I thought it took too long to get to that point.
Yes.
Way too, like, you're sold, this movie is sold to you as this girl gets knocked up by this guy and she keeps the baby. Let's see that.
Right.
Like it could have been half the time it took.
And it's not like there's anything here that like, you're like, oh, this is why she decided to have the baby or keep the baby. Like a lot of it is like, we're still like, I'm not really sold on the guy. I'm not really sold on these other parts.
I was going to ask about that, especially after talking about Juno. Was there a moment where she decided to not have an abortion or realized it was too late or...
Well, they very quickly, like, we're at the point where, they talk, like, they talk over kind of like what happened here. How did this happen? Once they've accepted that, she goes to the doctors, right?
Right.
And it seems like in the doctor sequences and then also when she talks to her mom, like those are the two sequences where she is really dealing with it. It's interesting because they show Rogen talking to his dad and her talking to her mom, and they're both kind of imposing. I don't know if I would say the opposite of what you think they would be saying, but it's just not exactly where you think it'd be. The mom's like kind of like, you definitely need to have an abortion, but like the way she talks about like her life in general makes it seem like this relationship is one where like you do the opposite of what your mom says. And you're like, oh, I don't like her advice. So whereas Rogen's like actually listening to his dad, and his dad's like, oh, you can't really plan for these things and just like go with the flow, accept life.
Speaking of Rogen's dad, what was he doing in America? Because isn't Rogen supposed to be from Canada illegally? Plot hole. Explain that. Unless he went to Canada and
he so we should mention he's played by Harold Ramis, incredible actor from Ghostbusters. But
his daughter's in that movie. Oh, that
yes,
okay.
yes.
There we go.
Just
all right now.
Harold Ramis was in Walk Hard too. So
was he?
Yeah, plays a rabbi.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure his name is Lahaim. In it.
That sounds like
Or
2007. Yeah.
Exactly. It plays pretty well in Dewey Cox.
Yeah. No, that's a movie where you can get away with stuff like that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, he's been married 3 times, so maybe he's remarried into an American family or something. But
maybe that's why Seth Rogen's here. But okay.
It is a good question. I didn't think about that because that's the.
I also thought about the Canadian thing when he got that job so damn quick.
Yeah, I was like, hey, wait a minute.
Even if you can legally work in the States,
right.
bro, like, come on.
Especially with his experience, he has no experience. He's not like he's a tech guy or anything. I guess he kind of is with the porn. Maybe he was coding for it. I don't know.
One of them had to have been coding, right? So I guess that's true.
These are things that Judd Apatow doesn't think about.
Exactly, man. Like, where's the internal logic, man?
You're putting all these Canadians in a movie, and you're not thinking about.
How did not one of them be like, "Yo, Judd, I got a level with you here"?
This doesn't make sense.
Like, just give me a little bit
also,
here.
Not enough Second City TV in here. Like, where's the Canadian representation?
Yeah.
I think Jay Baruchel, he's Canadian too. Is
Martin's also Canadian.
Martin
right?
Starr?
I think so.
That's very possible.
Or does he play a Canadian in Silicon Valley?
Ooh.
He might. I wouldn't be surprised if his character is illegally working in the country.
Pretty funny.
Yeah. And then he has to go get a visa, and then he gets it super easily. And then Kumail's character is like, "Man, it took me forever because he's brown."
Oh, that's right.
That's funny.
Yeah,
that's like season 1. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you watch Silicon Valley?
I watched the first season.
Okay.
No, I just know that.
Yeah, I was like,
I do think Silicon Valley and Party Down are probably like the best things Martin Starr has done post Freaks and Geeks.
I was gonna, say.
So he might be a Canadian because he played Canadian in that.
Sounds right.
But I don't know. I'm guessing.
The question is Jason? Well, not Sudeikis.
Seagal.
Jason Seagal. Is Jason Seagal Canadian?
Harold Ramis is a Canadian.
Yes, he is.
That's true.
And his daughter is a Canadian. Obviously, but she has that show Working Moms on CBC, and now it's doing really well. It's on Netflix here now.
I can't believe this is a sneaker Canadian hit.
Yeah. Anyways, that's my issue that I had with. That's my big issue with this movie.
Yeah, man,
what is his dad doing there?
Jason Seagal is not Canadian. Martin Starr, jury's still out.
Okay.
No, he was born in Santa Monica.
Oh.
So
there we go.
there you go.
Yeah, so Allison goes over to Ben's place for the first time, kind of meets all the roommates. There's like just a good bit where he's like, just sit in this chair while I go change my shirt. And then it's like every roommate comes through and does like the most like embarrassing or ridiculous thing. Right?
That was,
like,
I think Judd is really good at that in this movie. Maybe because he's just had so much training from like all these comedians.
Right.
Just okay, you've got all these characters. Each of them gets one joke.
Yes.
And that's your thing. Like even when they're running out of the house, when there's the earthquake,
right?
They each get one joke that is and the epitome of the character.
And that is visually set up. Like, like it's a pan of like, okay, Jason's covering his dick and like Martin's covering like a girl's boobs. Or like, and they move down the line.
Yeah.
Or Jonah, but yeah.
That's I of course clocked that Martin was covering Jonah is covering the boobs and then gets mad when Martin goes for the handshake.
Yeah.
I just realizing now how contradictory and hypocritical that is to the website that he's helping them build.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the epitome of this type of man, right?
Right, exactly.
This is my object. This
yeah.
is my,
Yeah. Well done, Judd.
That one, okay,
Yeah.
man, deeper than I thought.
Yeah.
But explain Seth Rogen's dad.
Yeah.
Because it's really throwing your whole movie off.
It's fucked up, man.
It's pretty fucked
man.
up. Can't get past that.
Yeah, we get some stuff with Pete and Leslie Mann's character. They're talking about like, should we have sex tonight, right? Which is just kind of contradicting like where they're at in their relationship.
Just how like we're gonna fuck tonight or what? What's the sitch on that?
Which I think is like something really smart about this script is that he's if he's talking about it. Like Juno is from the perspective of someone that is so young they can't even understand what it's gonna be, right? But these are two people that are theoretically about to cross the threshold and may really transform their lives, and so they're really looking forward to like the other people, like the other examples of like what will or could we be, which I think influences some of the back and forth between Ben and Allison pretty well, just where it's like. Allison's like, oh, Ben, I see you're like Pete. Like, I don't want you because you're gonna be a shitty guy like he is. That's where some of the gender play works for me. That it's like, it's the idea that like the worry is like, oh, you might be this intrinsic thing that's like unknowable or uncontrollable.
Yeah,
but
and
like,
vice versa, it works too.
Right.
With the sister,
but like
and the
we're
family.
recognizing there's more to us than just that.
Yeah.
And trying to use that trust to build.
Yeah.
It's tough to grapple with, really. Like because I do think it teeter-totters where it works at some places and just doesn't in others.
All in all, I think he does a pretty good job.
I agree. I think this is above the board for most of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, like for something that's aged, like 15 years, like it hasn't aged as bad as some of the early 2000 movies, like especially.
Right.
With just homophobia and like so many other normalized, beats.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ben spends the night over, and they have breakfast with the family. Another great bit with the Apatow kids of like, how do you think a baby is made? Like Leslie Mann asked the question, and the daughter just gives like the most ridiculous like monologue about a stork.
Which that is another case of Judd Apatow just rolling the camera and letting
his daughter say whatever.
Yeah. And that's what he got.
And it worked exactly. It's good to show like the times it works and the times it doesn't, right? Because it is just a degree off. I mean, there's the great like even Ben and Pete are watching the kids and they're just talking about bubbles. They're just like they're like these kids love bubbles, and Pete's like, man, I wish anything made me as happy as bubbles. And that's where like it's probably the first time that Ben is starting to see the perspective of like, oh, this could be cool being a dad. We get through all the doctors, meeting a million doctors. Ken Jeong, who ends up delivering the baby later on, who was a real doctor before he became an actor.
I was wondering too. I was like, I wonder if that played into him getting this role at all. If he was
right.
If he was as early in his career as I think he was, I could see that at least like being on the resume and being like, oh yeah, let's,
Yeah, I don't know what his like first like credited stuff is too, because even if like he played a more serious doctor somewhere else, and then you got to play the comedic version here,
right.
You would think that connection is what got him in.
He was really good actor. In the movie,
he's great.
Like. Dude, not just comedically, dramatically, he was incredible.
Well, in the labor scene where he he's angry at first because he's been pulled off, like he's on he wasn't even on call,
so
right?
Funny.
But then like the way they actually like negotiate the terms and the situation, like it shows a lot of maturity from Ben's character, of course, but he plays it believable. I mean, really he's pissed, he's like just pulling the card of like, do you want me to deliver your baby or not? Right. Like, he's playing it like such a dick, but like, he's probably dealt with this 200 times too. Right. This is his day-to-day job.
Yeah.
We also have BJ Novak,
Yeah.
Coming in, just another good one. His bit's pretty good because he's just like asking about, what's the situation with you two? He's like, and then
he's
he
just
starts
hitting
like hitting on
on
Allison.
Yeah.
And then we get Mo Collins for the third bit from Mad TV. And isn't she on she's in Don't Think Twice also? She's one of the improvisers
is she?
in that.
She very well might be. I don't remember.
Really, she's really good in this. Just very few like film credits. And I enjoyed her bit too. And then we get Tammy Sager, and she's playing this costume wardrobe designer. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I got Mo Collins and Tammy Sager mixed up. Tammy Sager is the one.
Yes, she is in Don't Think Twice. Yes.
But that's a really nice scene. It's basically she's doing the measurements for Allison and like fitting her wardrobe, and she's like, she just knows. She's like, yeah. So like, how far along are you? And it's the first time Allison's able to confide in anybody, and they play it so warmly and like, okay, we're gonna hide this. We're gonna do this well for you, and show off your boobs, like whatever.
Yeah.
And that is the thing I like about at least Allison's side of the story is like, you have the anxiety of like, oh, people are going to treat me bad because I'm pregnant. And then like, it just doesn't come to fruition. Like that's all it is the anxiety. Everyone is mostly supportive of her. Just nice to see. Like, I don't know, nice things can happen in movies. Like,
yeah.
There is, we kind of get into the fight with Debbie and Pete, basically before they like have their big breakup, and Ben and Allison have their big breakup too. But there's a really interesting line where Leslie Mann and Paul Rudd are like, they're going back and forth and saying, I wish you didn't do this, this, and this. And Pete says something about like I wish you weren't going off on this like anti-vaccination.
Oh yeah,
stuff.
he does drop that.
Yeah.
That's just slipped in there too, right?
Absolutely. Like, and it's put around some of the other like they're worried about child molesters in their neighborhood, and so it's like it's another very interesting one because that's just not where the talking point would be in '07. We're still talking about a lot of these things, but it's almost like the paranoia from this time has now evolved into these conspiracy theories, which is just insane to see. Like, just what's going on. Like,
Totally.
Yeah, they're at dinner, and the boys are kind of acting too boisterous.
Yeah, getting along too well.
Exactly. They do have a funny bit about peeing on De Niro's shoes, and
Paul Rudd's De Niro.
Paul Rudd's De Niro
Great.
is killer. And that again probably improv, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this is where like just kind of a lot of the guys' bad feelings and worries come out, and the girls are just kind of like, and it just plants the seed for the breakup, which is about to happen. They go home. Ben and Allison have sex. He's worried about hurting the baby during the sex.
Yeah, it's a fun sequence.
It's a fun sequence. It's one of the things I remember from when I saw it the first time was like him being like, I'm afraid like the first thing he's gonna see is like my dick, and it's just like, and she's like, you're not even close. Like it's just like it's a fun little bit.
Yeah.
And then like they're doing it, and he's like holding her stomach, and he's like, the baby kicked my hand, and he's like, I can't do it anymore. There's an earthquake that stops interrupts everything too, which we had gone through, and they're just picking through the rubble kind of, and she's really assessing like, who is this guy, right? Like $100 in his bank account, and the baby books I bought him are still in the bag that I bought them in, and they're under a sink or whatever. And that is actually a really great subtle moment because when they buy the books, he's like, "Oh, I'll put these by my, I will put these by my toilet, and I will have read them in a day."
Yeah.
And to see them not next to the toilet, like you just immediately
Didn't even
understand
try.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
At that point, I was frustrated with Katherine Heigl's character though, because I was like, "How did you not know that this was this guy?" Like,
Yeah, that
he's
was-
been clear from the beginning.
She came around the first time way too easily.
Yeah,
Like it should have taken her way longer to kiss him again.
yeah.
I feel like
think so too.
it was very much like pushing the narrative. Like we have to, in order for this story to work in the amount of time we have, she has to come around to him so that she can get mad at him.
And I will say there is something interesting about their breakup and how they come back together, because they do break up on the terms you would, that makes sense. And they don't get back together until she's in labor. I mean, she does not call him in that entire time.
Right.
Which is probably how it should go. Like they are over, and then it's like something in the moment, is like what causes her to reach out again.
Being forced to almost.
And he's grown on his own terms, without needing the push, the way that like Leslie Mann's character sets it up, like with Pete, where she's like, you just gotta tell them, they're shitty and they'll change eventually, or they'll hide the behavior from you, like whatever the fuck it is, and you're like, okay, that's obviously not the right way to go. And so you see like, okay, these guys are they could be on a better path at least, right? I mean, and the breakups do happen about here. We get the whole cheating sequence with Pete, where they think he's cheating, but he's really just playing
that was fun.
Fantasy baseball. It's pretty good subversion, because it's still a betrayal of trust, but it's not something you can't go back from, which I think is smart.
Yeah.
And I think I thought it was fun to have Seth Rogen's character also be like, if you saw that in a TV show or a movie, you'd think that was funny, right?
Exactly. The good meta.
I thought it was interesting that Seth Rogen's character kept being like, "Oh, let's not like, even if he, what did he say something like, even if he is cheating, like we shouldn't."
Oh yeah. Oh,
right?
he's excusing the behavior the whole time.
Right.
And there's also like the guys say, don't let your vagina hit you on the way out, or hit the door, whatever the fuck. It's a dumb line on purpose. And when I heard it, I rolled my eyes.
Same.
And then in the next scene, Rogen is like, "Ha."
That
line
was funny.
He repeats the line and says it's funny, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I was like, it wasn't that.
Yeah.
Great. That wasn't the point. Was the joke? It was.
It was so we could
he
get.
thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, cool. Like there's some moments like that where you just need to be let off the hook to know, like, does the filmmaker know what's going on here?
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's great stuff too. Like in that monologue where Pete and Debbie are going at it, and he's like, I don't know, sometimes I just want to go see Spider-Man in the movie theaters by myself. Just need some time. She's like, I like Spider-Man. It's simple stuff,
Yeah, that was actually a really good scene, because I think, once again, a lot of times women take on like the motherly role, and men can take a break. He needs to go see a movie by himself. But what about her? Why doesn't she get to? And I feel like that's actually not shown. I've never seen that like talked about in a movie before. I feel like I've definitely heard friends say that or family members say that, but I've never seen that depicted on TV or in a movie.
In a really well done way too, where it's like you kind of side with her.
Yeah, and he's not cheating, but he's doing something pretty really hurtful.
Yeah. Like
I mean, he's lying at the end of the day.
The betrayal of trust. Yeah.
And it makes sense why, like, the way that that Ben and Allison see Pete and Deborah is like, it's just what causes them to break up, which is kind of brilliant, like to tie it to this other thing. Like it, because you do get like at least one or two fun scenes of like, okay, now the girls get to be together and be like, fuck the boys, and the boys are like, fuck the girls, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether how well they do that, is its own thing, but it felt like could do good. They break up in the clinic. And there's a funny line where the tech is just like, oh, don't worry, that happens here all the time.
I wonder I wonder how true that is,
Right?
too. Like, I genuinely was wondering,
Yeah.
does that come from a place of truth, or is that just a funny line because it's a comedy?
Or the detective's trying to be nice.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
Yeah, another great line. Marriage is like an unfunny episode of Everyone Loves Raymond.
Yeah, that was great.
Just like, okay, yeah.
That was great. I really liked that he makes the case for frivolous comedies, especially coming from Judd Apatow, who's like about like, let's make comedy real.
Right.
And then you have like, you hear this perspective that he wrote on why like stupid sitcoms like Everybody Loves Raymond or Big Bang Theory are necessary and helpful.
Yeah.
And it's refreshing to hear.
No, truly. I mean, like he's not punching down on that, right? Like, yeah, and he's lifting it up, if anything.
Yeah.
The boys have all gotten pink eye through a series of pranks.
Why not?
Pretty good bit.
I thought that was funny.
Yeah, that's great.
I haven't like laughed at anything those boys did, but I was like, okay, that was a good.
And Martin Starr just shows up super high.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, yeah, great.
That was a
we knew it was
great
going
button.
there, but
Yeah.
The boys go to Vegas and take a lot of shrooms, which they go to a Circus Soleil show, which just feels like a quintessential
thing to do in Vegas while you're tripping.
Yeah. And it's actually funny because the show they're seeing is like one of those. It's one of those shows that people make fun of Circus Soleil a lot for because it's got that it has a giant baby throughout it.
Yeah.
And the baby's just like doing comedy bits and like by like halfway into that show everyone's like, fuck this baby.
Yeah.
But it actually has some thematic weight here, like that a giant crazy baby is coming after Rogan and he runs out, of the place because he's freaking out. There was some strippers. Stormy Daniels is in that shot. Just thought that's worth pointing out. The girls flip back to the girls' perspective. They're going to the club again.
Yeah.
And Craig Robinson is the bouncer.
Love
Another
that.
great get. And at first I'm like, it's really funny because he doesn't let him in, right? And they're like doing this whole takedown of like, oh, fuck you bouncers and like the way you see the world and yada yada yada, and you're like, yeah, and then he like pulls him to the side and he's like, listen, man, I know it's messed up.
I love that. Yeah.
And then he's also like, but then he hits him back. He's like, also, you're old as fuck and you're pregnant as fuck. Like, what the hell are you doing here?
Yeah.
Like, get the fuck out.
I love that line. Can't have a bunch of old and pregnant bitches.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. I really like that too because when he pulled her aside, I thought he was going to be like, listen, it's not you. It's your friend who's pregnant. Right. Chill out. But instead, he was like...
He's like, I love a MILF, but like this is not going to...
like, I get where you're coming from. I like that a lot, yeah.
And like at first... when it's going on, I was like, they could have got someone else for this because they're talking about like she's like, you're just a roided out freak, like she's saying all that stuff to him, and it's like that's not the case. It's just like once you see Craig do that beautiful bit, you're just like, this is why
that's why it's him.
And also when he was like, oh yeah, they only let me let 5% of African Americans in.
Yes.
That was so funny.
He's like I can only have one in a quarter.
Yeah, if there's 25 people in line, I can only let in 1 1/4 black people.
I better hope there's a midget in the crowd.
That was great.
Yeah, pretty damn good. Basically, this is like the part where the boys are in the hotel room then, and Paul Rudd is like, there's 5 types of chairs in this hotel room, which is just fucking funny.
Yeah.
You have to imagine that's literally something that happened at Judd, like you staying in a suite. And someone had that joke come up.
Yeah, I really liked that whole scene I really like that whole scene from a perspective of tripping.
Yes.
It felt very, very accurate to the sort of like conversations you would have and
the way Pete's just eating his hand in the back, like he's on his own like weird ass thing.
Yeah, the way you manage to have a conversation together while both completely talking about something totally different.
Right. and you can tell like Rogan is saying these words and realizing the things for himself, and then they're also hitting Pete, right?
Right.
And he's going, fuck, I do gotta change too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and exactly, it's the perfect barrier breaking thing to do. It's actually like a decent explanation for why the boys got their shit together and rethought their lives.
Yeah.
As far as like any of these beats go in like a story, you know?
And I like it too because it does come from I like it because it comes from a place of the boy shittiness of like, let's just go to Vegas and do shrooms. But it's like that immaturity that somehow at the right time and the right place was able to help them grow past that immaturity. I thought that was a really interesting decision to make.
Right. Well, and I think it's probably like, it's one of those too, like how far does the maturity take you, right? Like, because you see that path out, right? And then you hit a point of either rock bottom or whatever it is for change to happen.
Yeah.
Which is, right. I mean, yeah, something in the formula has got to change, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we very quickly, the boys are they've decided to go back, right? And so there's a birthday party for one of Pete's kids, and Ben shows up at it. He's trying to win Allison back, but it's that classic trope of like she gets to say out everything that she's feeling, but he doesn't get to say how he feels and express that he's changed. But I think it works pretty well in the moment because Allison is still headstrong on like who Ben is, like as a guy at the end of the day. And this is before Ben really does make any substantial changes. He hasn't got an apartment or a job or any of that stuff. He just thinks I can crawl back and it's going to work for me too. And it doesn't, you know?
Yeah.
But when Ben leaves the party, he runs into Pete, who's holding the birthday cake, about to like walk it out and sing. And he just like chews him out for being like essentially being like, why did you think like, my life could be good? Like, why did you think why did you think this would work out for me? Or like she would take me back or anything. And he's genuinely like hurt, like, and also like, I don't know, man, I thought you guys were pretty good together. And he plays that moment like with so much like pathos. You're just, you're so in it. And then, Ben walks away and then Pete just starts singing Happy Birthday and walks out. Like, it is like the bravest thing anyone's ever done, like you're just like, man.
Yeah. I feel like it was a pretty solid depiction too of like when you have kids that just like you don't get time to process anything.
Right.
I feel like I've seen with like being around more people like that have like tiny little kids those ages. It's like, yeah, if you're going through something, you're not gonna have time to do anything about it without tending to these things.
Yep.
Yeah.
So E is doing a maternity month. That's like a thing they pull Allison in the office to tell her. Again, just a good subversion of like any bad things you expect. Okay, you're finally pregnant enough that we can't address it, or we can't not address it.
Right.
So you're fired, right? Or whatever, and it's not the case. But you do, right before that, you get Allison interviewing people on the red carpet.
Yeah.
And like some of the interactions are like working with the baby, and like the Steve Carell one is like a real. I really love that moment. Like it's more the unglamorous side of it. Like you're really just fighting for people's attention.
Yeah.
And, the words are so quick and like even if like the intention isn't there, you could make Steve Carell look like an asshole.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
As Bill Hader says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of people from The Office.
Yeah.
In this movie.
Definitely. A lot in Walk Hard too, which is the the other Apatow like produced thing. Jenna Fisher's in that, and and Kristen Wiig's in that one too. It's just like, it's interesting. I wonder what the, sometimes it's like a casting director who like just has a certain amount of people on retainer.
Yeah.
You know, and they're always pushing that group, but sometimes it's also like they had 3 months off in their shooting schedule, and they're like, okay, like who's available? And like, you know, these are probably the only size roles they could get, and they're in comedies, so they're excited to do it. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, Ben gets his own apartment. He read the books. Doctor's not available. It kind of all shows up in this one moment. Pete and Leslie Mann's character have left town. So it all falls down on Ben, and Allison's in the tub. I think they do the delivery stuff pretty well.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a minute, you actually think they're gonna do a water birth.
Yeah.
Which I think is like a good fake out, and then Ben's like, "Okay, I know this is not the right call, like,
Right?
You know, in any capacity," and takes her to the hospital. The voicemail he leaves, the doctor is pretty funny. Just
Yeah, that's great.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, it shows that even though he's changed, he's still the same person.
Absolutely.
Which is nice.
Yeah. And yeah, you are right. Like, then the other parts of change are just him dealing with the doctor, right? Like him being like, okay, I need to get Leslie Mann's character out of the room. Like, how do I negotiate with her to leave? Yeah, Paul Rudd's got like a 2007 camcorder. I mean, it's just all right there. Jason Segal has a line. He says, gynecology is just a hobby of mine. But he like goes on this whole like line. Which is pretty good. I meant to double check on the real footage thing, because we had talked about this with the birthing.
Yeah.
It was the reason why that Sandra Bullock dropped out of this film. Because it looks really realistic. But that's a thing you could build a practical shot of, because they really only show it for like a second too.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot of work to do it practically, but be a lot of work to get a real like woman like drowning on film, you know?
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's a bit too much, right?
It's not necessary at all.
No.
I don't it didn't add anything for me.
I guess it was, for me, I'm like, the part that justifies it to me is like, okay, here are the realities of birth.
Right.
Which I guess is like important to show.
And they talk about like the fact that like you don't know the full impact of birth until like you're in the moment. So like I guess that could be like that's your big oh shit moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this is real.
But I don't think you have Martin Starr's reaction too when
right.
he or Jay Baruchel, I think.
Yes, Jay Baruchel.
You have his reaction when he runs in, which kind of also like if you play everything else up like you are,
right?
It negates that the need for.
You're right. Like, because why can't it just be in the imagination of like he looks up and then like we're looking at his face and his reaction,
and we see how disgusting it is.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of how all birth scenes are. You know, we're all like, oh yeah, I know this is gross. A woman's screaming. Nobody wants to be in there. But this like kind of adds that extra like this is why it's gross.
Right.
Or, like,
I guess that's true.
hard and tough. And yeah, I do see why it was added. But I'm also so grossed out by it. But I get it in a way.
Yeah. I guess I'm just like, why this movie? But I guess it's
that's
because
his thing, right?
Yeah.
That's what you guys were saying.
Yeah.
His thing
Right.
is realism.
Well, and also to go with the discussion of why this movie, I mean, you know, Mahyn said it earlier, there's things in here that like you just don't see in other films.
Yeah.
And so like it, you know, there's at least some ambition here, and like he is trying to do something with it. I mean, it's easily the visual image that will stick with you the most from this film.
Yes, definitely.
Right. Which is to say a lot for Apatow.
Yeah.
So
I mean, practice safe
Yeah.
sex is a message.
Yeah.
I like, because that could be you.
yeah, don't ask me what the point of this film is.
Yeah.
I cannot give you a good one like Juno.
Yeah, definitely this double feature very much is practice safe sex because it's like, even if you catch it and are like, we could do plan B or something, or like, even if it happens, it's like,
Yeah.
abortion isn't that easy of an option.
No,
it's a tough decision to make.
Exactly.
Like,
Tough decision is the right way to put it too.
Yeah.
Because it's like, obviously the process of it is hard, but like sexual implications of just visualizing what would my life be like, and now these, you know, there are the chemistry, you know, of yourself changing too. Like, it's, I'm sure it's a ton.
Your vagina, I mean, not always, but it can rip open, and you have to get like stitches and stuff. So
for the abortion?
No.
For like actual.
Yeah.
I mean, it's why some people opt to C-sections, because like, if I'm gonna have a scar or like something, like, you know, I'd rather it just be separate.
Yeah.
It's tough. Yeah, I mean, really, my last note here is Allison just like reacting to the baby. She's like, it's beautiful, and then Leslie Mann's character is just like, we're gonna have another baby. Like saying it to Pete.
That was great. Yeah.
Well, apparently when you give birth, like, you don't remember the pain after a little while. Like, apparently it just goes away, so you forget that.
I think it's it's like a traumatic situation, and that like you have a lot of blockage going on, right?
Yeah.
And it's there's a line in it where she's like, we can't be stressed when the baby comes in, because then the baby's born into a stressful environment.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, it's very, I just can't even imagine all the pressures that go on in this. And it's like one of the most natural things, right? Like, theoretically.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. And that ending shot I was talking about, it's Ben and Allison driving away in their car, and it's an overhead shot. They shoot it on the California highway, I think is what it's called.
That's right.
It's on the Pacific Coast Highway, but it's the little section of Santa Monica where it drops down onto the PCH, which is just like, it's what I think about when I think of LA all the time. It's one of those, you know, those 6 blocks have been photographed so much. And they just pan over to the sunset. It's just like I mean, you see that in any film. That's why when I wrote it down, I was like, I shouldn't be this impressed.
With this shot. Yeah.
Cool. On that note. Mahyn, where can we find you online?
My Mahyn Rocks
Mahyn
is my
Rocks?
username, yeah. Anywhere.
Nice. And you said you have a show coming up, right?
Yeah.
In April?
We do have a show in Alaska at the Alaska Before You Die Comedy Festival in April. But we'll probably do a monthly show before that somewhere in LA that you can catch at some point.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, keep an eye on Mahyn's socials for more updates on that.
Yeah.
Devin, I know you're kind of offline. Do you even want to plug a handle?
No, I should. That's the problem. That's my problem, is that I don't have pluggable handles, and that needs to change.
I mean, you have an Instagram account. You just haven't really posted to it in years, right?
Mahyn, who is my wife, for the listeners.
My wife.
I used to do a very 2007 bit, which was anytime I would talk about her, I would say, my wife. Just like casually, and then
as we all do,
didn't land enough times that I was like, yeah, it doesn't. And I think one of my brothers too was like, yeah, that bit doesn't work anymore.
Honestly, I think it just made it easier because we got married pretty young. So every time I'd be like, my husband, I'd be like, my husband. Like, it just felt so like awkward coming out of your mouth. So the only way he could say like my wife was to be like, my
wife. But what was I saying before?
Oh, we're just, if you wanted to plug Instagram or anything.
Oh, I was saying that I don't even have a photo of her on my Instagram.
Right.
Suspicious.
And she's like, come on, when's that going to happen?
Yeah.
I have made the promise a few times where I'm like, fine, I'll put a photo of you on Instagram tomorrow.
But I know it's not like anything suspicious because I've seen Devin try to post something on Instagram before and he's like, like it's so much.
I don't know what to do.
I don't think he knows where the DMs are.
Even like when I post on my story, because I'm like doing a show or something, I'm like, Mahyn, how do I add a tag? How do I tag? And then how do I make it
put
disappear?
A link in here?
I've seen.
She's like, look this stuff up.
I've seen Devin's attempts to like slide into DMs before we started dating too. Those are really funny to read.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
No joke.
Yeah, well, you can follow me at Lewis Hilligus IV on Instagram, Lewis Hilligus on Twitter. You can follow the show at CinemaSpan on Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, and wherever you get podcasts. Thanks so much for coming in today, guys. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I had a good time.
All right, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye-bye.